Hey, beautiful family. Lately, you are noticing, some of you are saying that I seem to be speaking more freely, I'm more energetic, and what you're seeing is I'm speaking from my heart with less effort, with more ease, like I used to, like the John persons knew before I fell ill with not only physical ailment, but mental and spiritual ailment as well. For I slipped into a spiritual ego after a lifetime of failure, and knowing that you can do more than fail, knowing that you have a future beyond there, but not being able to find a way to make that happen because you hadn't yet found your space with God. One of the hardest things to do when you finally do succeed is to stay quiet about it. And this is what I learned. This is what drew me in. That was the first step that drew me into this negative space. And of course I was ill, etc., and kind of incapacitated from that as well. But what happened was, as I carried on that journey, is I was piling on top of myself. Constantly I was piling on top of myself issues that I was not dealing with. Because I slipped into a spiritual ego, I was forgetting God. So a multitude of issues come. Number one, you put too much burden on yourself. I'm not designed to be a father and provider for more than 100 children, most of with special needs. I'm not designed for that. I need God to know that we can do this. I need God to be with me, to have the strength to do that. And I lost it because I got self-involved. I started to make the error of taking credit for things that were happening around me internally. I was still giving glory to God with my words, but I wasn't necessarily internally still in that space. And that's because I felt like the sweat of my own brow could provide for the children, because I lost track, because my environment was so intense. I had so many people around me needing things from me that I lost track of how I started this. And I started this by bringing that out and radiating it from me into the world, and that energy that connects us to the complete glory of the present moment where God is starts to maneuver and synchronize and manifest everything around you. When you switch into self-doing it from sweat of your brow, there's a time for sweat of your brow. I still work very hard to do what we do, as do many other people now. There's more than 130 persons working at Share Tanzania now. But it can only take you so far, because you are eliminating the greatest aspect of what you are, and that is the fact that you are made in the image and likeness of Mother, Father, Creator, which means you can bring forth their divine manifestation into this world. So as I carried on that journey, I was not only losing myself, I was losing my spiritual practice, I was not going internally, and on top of that I had physical ailment. As this went on, physical ailment, so on and so forth, I was also living my life. And things started to pile up on top of my heart, which is exactly what had happened to me before I came here. I know that all of you were children. All of you thus have lived from your heart. Hopefully you were raised in homes that did not cut that off too early. A lot of our parents accidentally do it by subjecting us to media, movies, things of this nature that break your heart. Our parents themselves maybe are carrying wounds, and for some people they can get all the way through with wonderful parents and not have the heart buried. But for others it gets buried so soon. For others, life events bury it a little later. When I came here, I had done a lot of work to unbury my heart. And the reason persons were enjoying me and enjoying my energy is because I was speaking from it. I remember so clear, because this is familiar to that time to me now. I feel it happening again. And I had it buried from life events, from all the things I had done. And I went through a process of self-introspection, of finding the kingdom. I've said recently, the kingdom is a state of being inside this reality. That's what it is. The kingdom of God is not here or there, as Jesus said, it's within you. And so, when you don't enter within, you take away the keys to that kingdom. So when I was living my life before understanding God and internal introspection and seeking inside, then I was having a heart like many of us that was buried. And you can see a person speaking from their heart, and you can see a person whose heart is buried under these problems. Now, one of the main tools I used was fasting, meditation. I spent 2 years alone in nature, as you all know. A lot of work, a lot of stuff had to come out of me to make me the man I could be, to serve God here and do what he wanted me to do when he called me all those years ago whilst I was still a drug addict. So one of the main factors that I was burying back then that I understood I needed to work on was forgiveness. And as I've walked this journey the last years whilst ill, I was living my life still, and things were burying my heart. I needed to forgive self and other. Self is the most important aspect of forgiveness. Often we don't realize that. We don't get taught that self-forgiveness is imperative, as well as the forgiveness of God, which is given from his grace and his eternal love for you, which is never changing and never ending. But the forgiveness of self and other, when we don't have that, corrodes us. When I was ill, I was not able to process forgiveness for things happening to me. I also had other issues, grief, etc. At one point when I was very sick, 2 children died within a month, one of which who I loved dearly, one of which where I lived as a proper family unit in the early years here with 2 sisters, Diana and Christina. And may Christina rest well. She was a beautiful light in my life and she changed me forever. But I never got a chance to say goodbye to her. And I carried this. I carried all of this with me, and my heart became closed. And persons noticed it. They stopped following me. They couldn't understand where I'd gone. Right in the middle of that, aside from the guilt, the things like guilt and grief and regret and all of these negative aspects that we have, forgiveness was always a key core for me. So I'm going to deal with forgiveness in this video because forgiveness is such a huge, well-known message because of Yeshua. But so few people actually understand it. So few people understand what they do when they don't offer forgiveness. When you refuse to forgive another person, let's start with forgiveness of other. If a person refuses to forgive you, it can sit on you and it can hurt you. But when you become mature and you realize that they are not forgiving you because they have not grown yet to a space where they can, then you don't need to hold on to that as heavily. You don't need to feel as hurt and as wounded by the fact that they are not forgiving you, because they are humans and they are not perfect. And so just as we struggle to forgive other people and forgive ourselves, they can struggle to forgive you. But when you yourself make a decision, or subconsciously, unconsciously, consciously, to not forgive somebody else, it is you that suffers. It's not them that suffers. It is you. Unforgiveness, there's a fly haunting me. Unforgiveness is a burden to you, the unforgiver, not to the one that you do not forgive. That is not a burden to them, it's to you, because when you don't forgive, I used this analogy the other day as well, you have this spectrum of your being. That's the kingdom. This is the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom is not here nor there. The kingdom of God is within you. And the kingdom is a state of being. And in this state, as an image to explain this, you can exude and radiate the love of God, which allows you to manifest his will and his love in this world. And God knows it's needed. But when you refuse to forgive another person, you cannot meet them, because you close up and you close up again, because you're burying your heart, because you are the one who's holding on to that. Your soul knows it's you retaining it. Now, when we look at the idea of not forgiving, we can come to a point where we ask ourselves, what's the difference energetically between being an upward spiral of emotion and love and gratitude and a downward spiral of complaint and negativity? This is a prayer to Satan. That downward drag on you is a prayer to Satan. That upward is a prayer to Mother, Father, Creator. You need to be here. You don't want to be in the downward drag. You need to be in the upward spiral. When you are not forgiving other and you are not forgiving yourself, what you are doing is you are complaining. And Bob Marley said it himself, complaints are prayers to the devil.
There is a place prepared for me, more beautiful than eyes have seen. When these burdens weigh me down, I won't lose heart, I will not doubt. Grace will lead me home. Grace will lead me home through every trial I have come. Only your grace.
I love this quote. Recently I read it again and it just sits with me so well. It's true. When you don't forgive, you are complaining about a past event. However egregious and painful it is, it's our duty to find the strength and the maturity, if that's the right word, and the power, the love to be able to forgive. Because that's the eradication of the complaint. To hold on and say, I'm not going to forgive them. This is you merely complaining about a past reality that has gone. And this is the beauty that God was trying to teach you in Christianity. That here today, by His grace, you are forgiven for everything, past, present, future. That means today, in this moment, you have a clean slate. God's love is inescapable. You cannot escape God's love. It can't be done. You are loved forever. But unfortunately, we have had a great pressure from the church of focusing on original sin that we've forgotten original innocence. And original innocence is only in the upstate. It's only in the state of gratitude. Because in that state you understand, I'm a human. I'm going to make mistakes. I cannot condemn myself forever for them. He or she is a human. They're going to make mistakes. I cannot condemn them forever for what happened. They're going to make the mistakes, and errors are forgiven. It doesn't mean you can run around doing whatever you want. Because as you run around doing whatever you want, instead of being up here, you drop down here. So you're still doing your prayers to Satan. When you become overly indulgent in the carnality of yourself, you still are dropping into the prayers of Satan. That is simply how it is. So you have to understand this, that to not forgive another person is to bury your heart. It's to close the kingdom that is you, within you. You're closing it. And to open it, you must forgive, and forgive, and forgive. And all the other stuff, all the other negative, heavy things that hold us down and close us off, we must do too, but this video is about forgiveness. And many persons in this world, they want to blame and judge. They are doing this, they should be doing this, they should be doing that. Forgive them. Forgive them. Forgive them of it and see how you feel internally instead of holding on to that. Because I can tell you now, the only way to bring any change is to have original creation and manifestation radiate out of you as a being. You can live inside a system where you haven't really had any original creation and manifestation. But I use this analogy, it's like being on a roller coaster. The tracks are set. You're in there, your family's getting born into that roller coaster. Unless you detach from the roller coaster and start building your own and get people to detach from it as well and perhaps join your new roller coaster that you're building, complaining about it doesn't work because you're still set on the track. You're still going to go where it's going to take you because it's not your decision. You didn't build it. And you've got then to build your own change in opposition to it. There's a Native American saying, instead of speaking of peace, let us live in peace. We cannot speak that we need peace. We cannot speak to the world we need peace and love and not have it internally. We cannot speak to the world we need peace and love and unity and not have that peace and love internally as we look at persons that we disagree with. It's counterproductive, it's counterintuitive. It doesn't work. Oh dear. There seems to be a advertisement. In Tanzania they play a loud advertisement sometimes from trucks. Forgive the background noise. Forgiveness is a great gift for us when it's understood. And one of the greatest aspects of forgiveness, which is often forgotten, is self-forgiveness. There are many things that we do and many things that we have done that force us into a state that makes us heavy. We come down. And God made it clear, and the Christian teaching makes it clear, you were forgiven. It was atoned for. There's no one's judging you anymore. No one's going to punish you with plagues. If so, then you are ignoring, if you are Christian, the idea of the new covenant. No one's doing that. The whole message is telling you you're free from it. It doesn't mean you can just do whatever you like, because then you're going to descend into the carnality and you're going to have no connection to the vibration of Holy Spirit and God and creation and manifestation. And you can't radiate love from that lower place, because it takes a certain vibratory state within you to radiate the love out. When you forget to forgive yourself, the damage is extremely, extremely heavy upon the soul. And often persons say, at least God has forgiven me, but still they are weighed down. And the reason they're weighed down is they haven't gone inside themselves and said to themselves, but do I forgive me? Do I understand that I too am a child of God, and that I will make errors and mistakes, and that God has offered me his forgiveness and I must offer myself my own? And when you do not offer yourself your own, you close up. You can't radiate the love anymore. You can't do it. You can't do it. You're buried. And I just recently came out of this again, because I had so much unprocessed stuff from the years I was ill, because I was using screen time more, because I was ill and I couldn't be bothered. My practice didn't work. I was in pain. And it's all interconnected, spiritual, emotional and physical. But my health crisis that I had is undoubtedly rooted in a spiritual, emotional and mental foundation, as well as a physical aspect. There needs to be an understanding there that I did not have. And with the responsibility God had given me, I praise God that I had the sickness I did. Because now, not only do I understand this, but I also, thankfully how he did it, have great understanding for the many hundreds of children with special needs that he's asked me to try and help. Because I myself was disabled briefly, I mean by that. Forgiveness. It's so spoken about, but it's so misunderstood. Forgiveness is the superpower. Forgiveness is the true superpower of your soul. When you forgive the wrongs of others, you recognize the wrong in yourself. When you don't forgive the wrongs in others, you don't acknowledge the wrongs in yourself. That means that you don't grow and you don't develop. When you don't forgive yourself, you hold yourself down. You dehumanize what you are. As you do when you look at others who make mistakes. You want them to be perfect, but none of us are. And when other persons will not forgive you, they're just facing the same journey that we are. You can't force it. They will come to it when they are ready. As I hope we will, as I did recently. No matter what has happened to you in your past, know that in a state of forgiveness, you enter a state of love and gratitude. Because you enter a state where you want to merely love instead of expecting to be loved. And you understand that you are doing that because the other persons, they too are human, and you've been there. You've been where it's a struggle to love. And you've worked out that you can just force that love out of yourself. And you command the vibration of the situations that you walk into, the room you walk into. You don't become a victim to the circumstance. You command it. You elevate it with your presence. And if you hang on to them and you say, this person in a position of a public figure who's wealthy or whatever, then you're condemning them, constantly complaining about them. You have not forgiven them, and you are closing yourself you are shutting off your God power. And arguably a lot of social media content these days is coming from where? Because it seems to forcefully make people do this. Especially many spiritual people who could be like that. They do this because they're always looking at the things to complain about. Forgive them. It's out of your control. If you can't move them, if you can't change them, it's not your business. And if you keep focusing on things you can't change, the things you can change are left undone. And collectively, only when we do the things that we can change will anything progress. And likewise, if something's been a wound, and we all have different wounds to different sizes, betrayals, harm to us, etc. in our past, however egregious and harsh it might have been for you, the more you hold on, the more you retain the complaint that this happened to you, the more you remain away from the kingdom, the more you remain away from the openness to walk with your heart wide open, and to put that into the world and say, here, take my love. You might not give me it back, but I don't care, because it's just pouring out of me. Forgiveness. It's a superpower. It's why Jesus was so set that forgiveness was a necessity. Let us stop complaining about the past things that have happened to us. Let us come into the present moment and also take no thought for tomorrow, as Jesus asked. And let us in there find a space where we can go internally and start untying these knots of unforgiveness and grief and whatever else are within us. And as we untie them, liberate ourselves and go closer and closer to being able to do greater works than He, for He will have gone to the Father, as Jesus said. And the only way you can do that is to have the same love that He had. And if you are unable to take these rocks off your heart and untie these knots of unforgiveness inside you, that love will never ever come through. Just this will not connect to this and to this, because this will hesitate. And as you meet people in the world, you might want the perfect partner, and you know what they look like. They're going to be loving and happy and light and energetic. But when you meet them, your burdens of unforgiveness mean that you bring something into that relationship. You bring doubt and suspicion, and the vibration is felt by them. The vibration is felt within them. And because they're open and they're just throwing love out, you don't match. It's like a round peg in a square hole. And so the more we carry on with the journey of unforgiveness, we even cut ourselves off from those higher vibratory people that we more than likely really do need inside our lives. Because those higher vibratory people, they feel it on a soul level when they meet you. Something's not right, there's something this person's retaining, they don't trust me fully. And only when you forgive the wrongs that have happened to you from others can you come into a relationship present and fresh and say, I love you and I trust you. And that's exactly the relationship that God has offered you, that you are forgiven. Doesn't mean do what you want, but it does mean that what you have done wrong and what you will do wrong will be forgiven. As long as you recall this every time when it feels wrong and you go off balance, that you run to God and you say, hey, do you forgive me? And it'll always be yes. And then God will turn it back on you eventually and say, forgive yourself. You're just a child. You're just young. You're learning. And when you forgive yourself, the world changes and opens up for you. It really does. The most important part of all of this is to understand that that clean slate that you can bring to others, that clean slate that you are able to find with inner work, and only with inner work, only by spending time alone with yourself. When you find that state, you find the same state by which God looks upon you. God's name, I am that I am. That means if you can use those words yourself, you can say it. I am forgiven. I am forgiveness. That's the way that you connect to that true deep understanding of our beautiful Mother Father Creator. I am forgiveness. I am that I am. God bless you guys. Bye. You know the other thing, when you come from your heart, sometimes you don't really even know what's going to come out of it. That's the connection to Source. Because Source so speaks through this when it's open.